Imagine a man who had it all: wealth, luxury, fine clothes, and lavish feasts, and another who had nothing, just hunger, pain, and a desperate hope for crumbs. But what if, after death, their fates were reversed? Could the rich man's regrets change anything, or is it already too late? And more importantly, could a message from beyond the grave save the living from making the same mistake? Stay with me as we unravel their gripping story. By the end, you'll decide who truly had it all. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in a prosperous city, there lived a man of great wealth. He wore the finest clothes made of purple, and that only the richest could afford. Every day, he hosted grand feasts in his mansion, where tables overflowed with lavish food and drink. His life was one of luxury and indulgence, never short of comfort or pleasure. Surrounded by friends and servants, he enjoyed the best that life had to offer, paying no attention to the world beyond his own desires. Outside the gates of his mansion, there lay a man named Lazarus, a beggar whose life was the stark opposite of the rich man's. Lazarus was covered in painful sores, his body weak from hunger and sickness. He had no family to care for him, no friends to offer him food or shelter. Each day, he would sit at the gate, hoping to eat even the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table, but none were ever offered. He was so poor that the street dogs came and licked his sores, offering more attention than any human ever did. The rich man passed Lazarus every day as he went about his life of luxury. But despite seeing him, he never truly noticed him. To the rich man, Lazarus was invisible, just another part of the city's background. He never extended a hand or even a crumb of food to the poor man who suffered at his gate. Then one day, Lazarus died. Though he had lived a life of suffering and poverty, his soul was carried away by angels to be with Abraham in paradise, where he finally found rest and peace. Not long after, the rich man also passed away, but his fate was far different. Instead of paradise, he awoke in Hades, the place of torment. The once wealthy man, who had lived in splendor, now found himself in unimaginable agony, surrounded by flames and pain. In his torment, the rich man looked up and saw Abraham far off, with Lazarus by his side. Lazarus, the beggar he had ignored, was now in a place of comfort, while he was left to suffer. Desperate for relief, the rich man called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham replied, "My son, remember that in your lifetime you received all the good things: wealth, comfort, and pleasure, while Lazarus received only suffering and hardship. Now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides, there is a great chasm between us. No one can cross from here to you, and no one can cross from there to us." The rich man realized the terrible truth: his fate was sealed. There was no escape from his suffering. But his thoughts turned to his family. He had 5 brothers, all living the same kind of life he had, and he feared they would end up in the same torment. "Then I beg you, Father Abraham," the rich man pleaded, "send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so they do not come to this place of torment." But Abraham shook his head. "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." Abraham's reply was solemn. "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced even if someone rises from the dead." The rich man's heart sank with despair. He realized that his brothers, like himself, had been given every opportunity to learn from the teachings of Moses and the prophets, but they had chosen to ignore them. The warnings had always been there, but their lives of indulgence had blinded them to the truth. The rich man's fate was now fixed, as was Lazarus's. The one who had been ignored and despised in life was now comforted, while the one who had lived in splendor was left to suffer. The rich man's regret and agony were not just for himself, but for the missed chances, the opportunities to show compassion, kindness, and mercy to those in need, opportunities that were now lost forever. In the end, the parable teaches us a profound truth. The choices we make in this life have eternal consequences. It is not wealth, power, or status that matters in the eyes of God, but how we treat others, especially those in need. The rich man's wealth could not save him. just as Lazarus's poverty could not condemn him. What matters is whether we listen to the teachings of compassion, justice, and mercy before it's too late. And so the rich man remained in his eternal agony, while his brothers lived on, blind to the warnings all around them. The story begs the question, what would it take for you to change? Would you wait for a miracle from beyond the grave, or listen to the truth already in front of you? The clock is ticking, and eternity waits for no one. This story from Luke 16 verse 19 to 31 serves as a warning to all, to open our eyes and hearts while we still can, to care for those less fortunate, and to heed the divine teachings before it's too late to change. For when we leave this life, our choices will follow us into eternity. As Jacob traveled toward Haran, he came to a certain place to rest for the night. With nothing but the open sky above him and a stone to use as a pillow, Jacob lay down to sleep. As he drifted off, he had an extraordinary dream, one that would forever change his understanding of God's presence and purpose in his life. In the dream, Jacob saw a vast ladder or stairway reaching from the earth up to heaven. On this ladder, angels were ascending and descending, moving between the two realms. At the top of the ladder stood God himself, in all his glory. The sight was awe-inspiring, as it symbolized the close connection between heaven and earth, and the constant interaction between the divine and the human world. Then God spoke to Jacob from the top of the ladder, and his words echoed the promises he had made to Jacob's father, Isaac, and his grandfather Abraham. He said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring." God continued, saying, "I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." These words were a profound reassurance to Jacob, who had fled his home in fear and uncertainty. In this dream, God was confirming that despite Jacob's past deceit, his covenant was still in place. The promises made to Abraham and Isaac would now continue through Jacob. Not only was Jacob chosen, but his descendants would inherit the land, and through his family, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. This was a direct foreshadowing of the role Jacob's lineage would play in the coming of the Messiah. When Jacob awoke from the dream, he was filled with awe and reverence. He realized that this ordinary place where he had slept was in fact a sacred space where heaven and earth had intersected. He exclaimed, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." The presence of God had been so near, yet Jacob had been unaware of it until the dream opened his eyes. Recognizing the significance of what had happened, Jacob decided to mark the place in a special way. He took the stone he had used as a pillow and set it up as a pillar, pouring oil over it to consecrate it as a holy site. He named the place Bethel, meaning House of God, because he believed it was a location where God's presence had been revealed to him. In that moment, Jacob made a vow to God, saying, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth." Jacob's response was both one of worship and commitment. He recognized God's promise of protection and provision. But he also committed himself to serving God in return, pledging that if God kept him safe, he would give back a portion of what he received. This moment was a turning point for Jacob. Though his journey had begun in fear and uncertainty, it was now marked by divine assurance and purpose. The vision of the ladder was a reminder that God was not distant or removed, but actively involved in the world and in Jacob's life. The angels ascending and descending represented the continuous interaction between the heavenly and earthly realms. And God's promise was a reminder that his plan would unfold through Jacob and his descendants. Jacob's dream at Bethel became a lasting symbol of God's faithfulness, and it is a story that has been cherished for generations. It speaks to the belief that even in moments of hardship or uncertainty, God can break through the ordinary and reveal his presence and his plans. It reminds us that God's promises are sure, and that his covenant extends beyond human failure or mistakes. For Jacob, the ladder represented a direct connection to heaven, a sign that God was with him, watching over him, and guiding him toward his destiny. This dream marked the beginning of Jacob's transformation, as he would go on to wrestle with God, be renamed Israel, and become the father of the 12 tribes that would form the nation of Israel. Jacob's ladder continues to be a symbol of hope, reminding us that heaven and earth are not so far apart, and that God's presence can be found even in the most unexpected places.